Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, and I'm back on the history of fishing reel companies and fishing reels. And we'll start with a disclaimer that I'm not an expert, and nor am I a collector of fishing reels. I happen to like repairing them, but I don't have an extensive collection other than a few that are sentimental to me, but I certainly don't focus on every reel that every manufacturer ever made along the way. But a lot of folks seem to enjoy the conversation we had on Four Brothers fishing reel, and we're going to add Shakespeare today. And I went back to look at the company history because it's one of the oldest ones around. And Shakespeare, in its logo, says since 1897. And being a fellow that kind of likes history and likes to fool around and see what things are, I decided that that would be a good place to start. It's got a rich history. I'm not going to cover it all, but we'll cover some of the high points. And I would tell you, if you're interested in this kind of thing, to certainly go ahead, go out on the internet, go find some books, go find some reels, and make the most of what you want to learn about that. So I have an array of Shakespeare reels here, but let's start at the beginning. A lot of folks think that Shakespeare is an English company because William Shakespeare was the bard of the Avon, and a lot of folks think that there's a similarity or a relationship there. There's not. William Shakespeare Jr. is the founder of the company, and he founded the company in 1897, as the logo suggests. And before he founded the company, he loved fishing, and he was into cameras and medicine and advertising prior to filing a patent. So of course, when I saw that, I had to go out online and go to the U.S. Patent Office and find out just what he filed the patent on that got Shakespeare started. So in the patent, right up front, it says, "Be it known that Shakespeare, William Shakespeare Jr., from Kalamazoo, Michigan," so this is where it was formed, "is filing a patent for a certain new and useful fish line reel, which has the following specification. The invention relates to the improvements in the class of fish line reels that provide for the winding of line in irregular, even layers similar to those found on spools of thread." So what he invented, essentially, is what we've come to know as the line guide or the level wind reel. And the first one in his patent, wonderful if you're into mechanics, is the drawing of it, and you will see the line guide mechanism on this reel. And this reel did become the first Shakespeare reel that was out there. So 1897, it's formed. He gets his patent. He goes into the manufacture of those reels. And the rest, as they say, is history. And let's review some of the history because it's a rich history. So he starts building them, and in 1908, he acquires a company from a friend. And this is not a 1908 reel, but the friend is Markoff. And Shakespeare Markoff actually becomes a reel in 1908. And this is pretty much the same kind of design. This one actually kind of works. It's a little rough, but it kind of works. It's essentially the same design that hadn't changed other than adding Shakespeare to the Markoff name since 1908. This one was made in the 1940s, the later 1940s. But Shakespeare capitalized on that. And then what happens? World War I comes along. He halts production. He goes into supporting the military. And in World War I, they converted their manufacturing facilities for mortar fuses and automobile carburetors to support their war effort. Well, I think in history we've always found that wars and other things lead to technological improvements. And coming back after the war, they converted back to making fishing equipment. And they signed up more than 5,000 distributors nationwide in the U.S. So that's how Shakespeare became a broad brand, and then started his innovations again later in the 30s. This is still William Shakespeare Jr. He filed another patent for anti-backlash of reels, and he came up with a series called the Wonder Reel. Now, this is actually in that series, but it's a later one. This is a Shakespeare Wonder Reel, and what they did there was they brought the innovations that they had learned from the trades and from the evolution of the Industrial Revolution, and they put them into the fishing reel technology. So what happens in 1939? Well, World War II breaks out, and Shakespeare again converts his company, and they sign contracts to build controls for aircrafts, tanks, and jeeps. And that, of course, lasted through the war years. And coming back in the post-war years, they introduced a reel called the Shakespeare President. Now, a lot of us out there know that the Shakespeare President, well, President is a brand of Fluger, or at least it's one of the variations. It's probably one of their most popular, the Fluger President's reel. We'll get to that in just a moment. But for 47, they introduce the President line of reels, but also they introduced rods, and they also introduced monofilament. And Shakespeare was one of the first companies to actually build fiberglass rods, and they were also one of the first companies to manufacture monofilament from raw material. So lots of things go on with Shakespeare as leading edge design and manufacture that maybe we're not giving him credit for, because today, if you look on the Shakespeare websites, or you go to buy a Shakespeare reel, there's hardly a reel over $50, and many of them wind up on rod and reel combinations in the lower dollar amounts for the entry-level anglers. So don't dismiss the company because of the current product line that's out there today. So post-war years, Kalamazoo, Michigan moves to South Carolina. They're building fishing rods, they're building fishing tackle and equipment, they're continuing to build their fishing reels. And Shakespeare starts dating, well, probably a little bit before that, but they start dating their reels on the fishing reel itself. And there's actually a secret decoder code that goes along with that. But if you have a Shakespeare reel from the time, you will be able to see that there's a dating formula there that tells you when the model was introduced. It doesn't tell you the year that it was manufactured, but it tells you the first year that the model was introduced. So let's just take a look at this one. We'll do some secret decoding here real quickly just to show you how that works. And the reason I told you the Markov reel here was not a 1908 is it says model GE. Well, if you go to a model GE, the first letter G aligns with 4 and the E aligns with 6. So this was introduced right after the war. So 1946 was the first year of production, and this stayed in production until 1960. So anywhere in there, this reel could have been built. I don't have a clue. Again, I'm not an expert on that, but the 46 was the first year of it. So let's do one more just for fun. So here's that Wonder Reel again. It's a Model 2000, and it's Model EB. So if you look at E, it's 6, and B is 9. So in 1969, this reel came out. So a lot of folks say, you know, what's the age of my reel, and you know, what's it worth and things like that. Well, the age of this particular reel started with the manufacturer in 1969. So that makes sense. If you look at this reel, it looks very much like a Mitchell 300 at the time, and that was probably one of the reels that it was competing against. That's a fun little reel that I actually use. So we're up to into the 60s. Lots of things start happening. Hey, that president, that Shakespeare president that we said, gee, Pfluger's got a brand out there called President. In 1966, Shakespeare acquired Pfluger. And I assume that's how, although I can't say it definitively, that's how Pfluger Presidents, in terms of their spinning reels and the like, took up their name. 65, they relocated all operations to South Carolina. And then from there on, things just kind of got interesting. The corporate headquarters moved down there in 1970. 72, they become listed as a public company on the stock exchange. There's a minority investor in there called Anthony Industries. They purchased up to 35% of that company in 1979. Later on, I think it was 1996, Anthony Industry takes full control of it, and it changes the name to K2. And then most recently, 2007, Pure Fishing, which is Penn and Abu and Mitchell and other brands, acquired K2 and the fishing line called Shakespeare. So 100-year celebration in 1997 2007, it's part of the Pure Fishing company. Today, I think they're more renowned for their ugly sticks, which were introduced in 1996. But they also continue to manufacture that line of reels. Again, they're on the lower end, but that's part of the Pure Fishing strategy of good, better, best. And Pfluger is in that better. So the entry level or the good level is the Shakespeare and the Mitchell. It's a shame, but Mitchell. The better is the Pflugers and the Abus. And the best is, of course, their pen line. So that's the brief history of Shakespeare. Lots of gaps, right? If you want to learn more about that, I encourage you to go out. There's a lot of historical books. There's also an organization out there I want to call your attention to. I've recently joined it. It's called the Old Reel Collectors Association Online, or ORCA, like the whale. The annual membership is about $40 a year for new subscribers. And ORCA provides a wealth of information about old reels, company origins, and they have the folks that are the experts. They have the folks that could probably tell you every reel that was introduced by the company and when it was introduced and the like. So I can't do that, but again, for the purposes of this video, I just wanted to introduce you to some of them. So we have the Wonder Reel. We have the Markov, we have the President. Here's a later day version of the Synergy. This is out now as a closed face baitcaster. Here's one probably from the, I'm going to say the 70s. This is a Norris at Shakespeare. The 2116 is the model. Norris Shakespeare, I kind of glanced over a lot of stuff, but Norris Shakespeare was the fellow that took over the company that was in Great Britain, Alcox and Young. This was the European expansion. So Norris Shakespeare actually was the European brand. However, it tells me here that it was made in Japan. So the Shakespeare expanded into England in 1966. This one I'm going to date as the 70s, although I can't say for certain. And there are no date codes on this reel or the later models. Here's a beat up Prius, just a parts reel, just to show you what a modern one would have looked like in 2000 or so. Date codes were stopped in 1977. So I hope that helps. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have a company you want to know a little bit more about, please let me know. I'll add it to my list. And we'll see where this takes us. I'm enjoying it. I've always enjoyed history, and I'm enjoying kind of learning a little bit more about the companies that I see and the reels that come across my workbench. So this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Thank you for watching.